So you work really hard for this. But what we're going to talk about today are 5 things that you should never do with your money, because if you do, it's just going to disappear. Before we get started though, make sure to subscribe to this channel and let's get to it. The first thing that you should never do with your money is buy a timeshare. So I got to tell you a story about when my wife and I first got married. We went to this one in California at Lawrence Welks. It's like a resort. And they give you this spiel where if you come, we'll give you a $50 gift certificate to a restaurant close by or something like that. And so of course we're newly married, we don't have a lot of money, and we're like, okay, all we got to do is go to this spiel for an hour, and they're going to give us a $50 gift card. Like, I'm in. So we go, and after every time someone signs up, this was like a $30,000 timeshare. So for us, that's like a giant amount of money, right? But every time someone signed up, they would pop a bottle of champagne, right? And so we're listening to their spiel, and pop, pop. We're like, how are all these people signing up for a $30,000 commitment just like that? Like, they're in this very short window of time, they're getting suckered in, right? And I'm just thinking, sucker, 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 right? Like the whole time. And the reason being is because my grandparents had one, right? And so, but it was very tempting, because you're like, wow, everybody else is doing it, right? There's this lure of like, hey, you could travel every year to the same place for 30 grand, and plus you have to pay the maintenance fees. And then you're probably thinking, well, but you don't have to go to the same place. They have timeshare exchanges and stuff. Yeah, they do, but that's a pain, right? And so the idea is like, one of the things I realized is my grandma was trying to give them away, right? Like, hey, she would ask me, her grandson, or her kids, like, hey, can you use this, right? Because she can't use it because she has something else going on that year, right? And so it's one of those things where it's this giant sum of money, it's a big pain, and it's a responsibility that most people don't want. And at the end of the day, if you want to get out of it, it's even more difficult because it's actually a contract, right? So you can't just give it back to the place, right? You have to find someone to sell it, or you gotta exchange it to somebody, right? And so in some cases, it actually costs you money, like 3 grand, to just get rid of it. So at the end of the day, that would be the first thing to never do with your money, is buy a timeshare. So the second thing you should never do with your money is invest in penny stocks. And I know this from firsthand experience. And before I get into what I bought, I'm gonna talk to you about an experience that I had. So when I was 15, I wanted to work at a movie theater. So I got a job working at a movie theater. But I really didn't like it that much. I was basically cleaning the theaters and working the counter, selling stuff. And I just thought, I'd much rather work at Blockbuster. It was closer to my home. I still love movies, and you'd get free movie rentals, right? So I was like, this is great. And so I think I got 5 free movies a week. And so you're like, score at 17 years old, whatever it was at that time. I transitioned from working at AMC to working at Blockbuster. And so I loved it. I was like, man, this is the greatest thing. People are always coming in, there's lines. And so I thought, oh man, this is gonna last forever, right? Wrong, right? Then there came this thing called Redbox. Well, Redbox, is this kiosk where you can go rent DVDs, and they were only like $1, and Blockbuster was charging $4. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like this is not that great of a deal, right? But at one point, this is where this comes in with the penny stocks, Blockbuster was like 37 cents a share, something like that. And I'm like, but I'd worked there since I was a kid, right? And so there was this, I think this was probably 10 or 20 years after, and I'm thinking they're gonna make a comeback. They had these Blockbuster Express machines that were gonna compete with Redbox, and then they had like this Blockbuster On Demand with one of the satellite providers. And I thought, hey, they're gonna make a comeback, so I'm gonna invest, I think it was like $500 or whatever it was, into this 37-cent penny stock, right? And what happened? They went out of business, right? And so that's what happens sometimes, is our emotions just get to us, and we're thinking, hey, I think this company's got a shot. I think they can make a comeback. I think, that they're gonna figure it out, and they don't, right? And so that is the second thing that I would love for you to stay away from. Never invest in penny stocks. So the third thing you should never put money towards is playing the lottery. And I also did this when I was younger because I didn't know any better. I thought, hey, I have a great chance of winning the lottery, right? And if I don't win it big, at least maybe I can win something. But the truth is that the odds are 1 in 300 million, according to Lottery USA. So that's about one person in the entire United States, right? You have a better chance of getting killed by a shark, which is 1 in 3.7 million. So you have 100 times better chance of getting killed by a shark, which I don't think anybody wants. And you actually have a much better chance of getting struck by lightning. And this is crazy. It's 1 in 161,000 people. So just think about that. Like, do you know anybody that got struck by lightning? Because I don't. And so the reality is it's very unlikely that you're going to win the lottery. You're much better taking that money, investing it consistently over time. And I actually have this example that if you were to invest $100 every 2 weeks, so about $200 plus a month, because there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So about 26 times in a year, about $100 every 2 weeks, that you would have over $1 million in retirement if you did that. So the reality is you're better off just investing that money consistently than playing the lottery. So the fourth thing that you never want to do with your money is invest in something that you don't understand. And I think this happens all the time, unfortunately, right? You'll have a friend that tells you about some business opportunity that they heard about. It might not be theirs, but it might be something that they went to, and they're like, hey, you gotta check this out. And then they start explaining to you, and you're like, well, how does it make money? I don't understand. They're like, doesn't matter, it pays 15% or 30%, like just get in, right? Like, no, it does matter. Like, you want to understand it. If you don't understand it, stay far away from it, right? I think that some of these examples are like Ponzi schemes, right? And so I have a buddy, and he had a show where he talked about personal finance stuff, and he had interviewed this guy that was an investor. And this investor was going to invest other people's money and buy real estate and pay this really good return. And so people just got really excited about it. And then it happened to one of the guys said, hey, I'm getting checks, but they're changing in value and they're not what I expected them to be. And then he went to go fly out to the place where the real estate was, and there was just a slab. There was actually no home there. So he was thinking he was getting rent checks from people living in this place, but in reality, the investor was just trying to pay with somebody else's money, and it was just this disaster. And so the reality is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if you can't understand it, then I would stay far away as possible. The last but not least thing to never do with your money is to spend all of your paycheck. And I'm guilty of that, right? But I've learned from it, and I want you to learn from my mistakes. Because what would happen is I would get a paycheck, and then I would go out with my friends, I would go to restaurants, I would buy clothes, I'd do whatever, and then all my money's gone. And then I'm like, gosh, I've got no money to go on this trip that I want to go on to. Or, hey, I've got to fix my car and I don't have money to fix my car because I spent it doing these other things, right? And so a good rule of thumb is to give 10% away first, save at least 20%, and then spend the rest, right? And obviously, if you could save even more, right? Some people are a little bit more aggressive. They want to save 30, 40%. That's great. Depending on how much you want to save for the future, whether it's you want to save for a house, you want to save for a new car, whatever it might be, these are just guidelines to help you be more successful when it comes to your money. So if you like this video, please be sure to hit the like button. Also, if you invested your money or put your money somewhere where you never wish you did, please comment below. I'd love to hear from your experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.